Honey, you would not believe the story I heard just yesterday. A woman named Carol came in for a trim and a gloss treatment, and let me tell you, she was a wreck. Her eyes were puffy and red, her shoulders were hunched, and she kept picking at her cuticles. I could tell right away that she wasn't just here for a new look. She was here to unburden her soul. She sat down in my chair, looked at me in the mirror, and just sighed a sigh that must have been a decade in the making. "I don't know what to do, Maria," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I feel like I'm losing my mind." I just nodded, giving her the space to talk. I grabbed the spray bottle and started misting her hair, a gentle, soothing rhythm. "It's my granddaughter, Lily," she began, her voice cracking. "She's 5 years old and she's my whole world. I'm a young grandmother, you know? I had my daughter Jess pretty young, so there's only a 20-year gap between us. Lily and I are so close. We used to have sleepovers every Friday. We'd bake cookies, build blanket forts in the living room, and watch old Disney movies until we both fell asleep on the couch." My heart ached just listening to her. The way she talked about her granddaughter, you could feel the love pouring out of her. But about 6 months ago, everything changed. It started with little things. My phone calls to Jess, and Lily started going to voicemail more often. Then my texts went unanswered. I'd show up at their house, and the door would either be locked or her husband, Mark, would answer and give me this cold, distant look. "They're busy, Carol," he'd say. "Lily's napping, or we have plans." It was always an excuse, and his tone was so final. It was like he was a brick wall. I almost dropped the spray bottle. A brick wall. My mind immediately went to the worst-case scenarios. Is he a bad guy? Is he controlling? I tried talking to Jess about it, Carol continued, a tear finally escaping and running down her cheek. I said, "What's going on? Why can't I see my granddaughter? What did I do wrong?" And Jess, she was different too. She seemed so tired, so withdrawn. She would just say, "Mom, you don't understand. Mark thinks it's for the best right now." And that was it. She wouldn't elaborate. She wouldn't look me in the eye. It was like she was a stranger in her own skin. This is the part that got me. The way she described her daughter, it wasn't just about being busy or a normal family disagreement. There was something else, something deeply wrong. Carol's hands were shaking as she talked, and I gently put down my tools and just held her hands for a moment. "I tried everything," she whispered, her voice full of desperation. I called, I texted. I left flowers on their doorstep with little notes for Lily. "I love you, sweetie. Grandma misses you." Nothing. Just a cold silence. I went to her school, hoping to catch her at pickup, but Mark was always there. He would see me and his jaw would clench. He'd grab Lily's hand and pull her away, practically running to the car. One time Lily saw me and waved, yelling, "Grandma!" and he just jerked her hand and didn't even look back. That broke me, Maria. It absolutely shattered my heart. I was speechless. A grandfather keeping his daughter from her own mother is one thing, but a son-in-law, that's a whole other level of twisted. What could she have possibly done to deserve this? I mean, she sounds like a loving, doting grandmother. My mind was racing, trying to come up with a reason, any reason, but nothing made sense. Carol was just a kind woman who loved her family, and yet she was being shut out completely. It was like a part of her was being ripped away, and she had no idea why. She was lost, and honestly, so was I. After a few minutes of just letting her cry, I handed Carol a tissue. Her makeup was a mess, but she didn't care. She was on a mission to understand. "I felt like I was going insane," she said, her voice hoarse. I started questioning everything. Did I say something wrong at Christmas? Did I overstep a boundary with Lily? Was I too loud, too opinionated? I went over every single conversation we've had in the last year, trying to find a reason, a clue, but there was nothing. It was like a total blackout, a sudden inexplicable freeze. I even asked my friends, am I crazy? Do I seem too involved? They all said no, that I was a wonderful grandmother. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this in my salon chair. The self-doubt, the desperate search for a reason when you've been blindsided. It's a universal pain. I got so desperate, she continued, her eyes fixed on her reflection, that I decided to do something I'm not proud of. I knew that Mark was a stickler for schedules, so I knew what day Lily had her ballet class. I parked my car down the street, hoping I could just see her for a second, maybe get a quick hug. I felt like a criminal, Maria, hiding in my car just to catch a glimpse of my granddaughter. It was humiliating. I almost gasped. Can you imagine? A grandmother reduced to a stalker just to see her own flesh and blood? It was heartbreaking. And then I saw something, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, as if someone might be listening. Mark was there to pick her up, but he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him, a woman I'd never seen before. She was tall, with dark hair, and she was holding Lily's hand on the other side. They walked out of the ballet studio, and Lily was laughing, skipping between them like they were a little family. A perfect little family that I wasn't a part of. A new woman? Oh, the alarm bells were ringing now. My mind immediately went to the most obvious conclusion. A new girlfriend, a new wife, an affair. And the new woman didn't want the grandmother around, so she could be the new grandmother. It's a cliché, I know, but it happens. My hands were getting clammy just from the thought of it. I felt sick to my stomach, Carol said, her face pale. I knew it was wrong to jump to conclusions, but my mind was spinning. Was this woman the reason? Was Mark having an affair and didn't want me to know? Was this new woman the reason my daughter was so withdrawn? But something didn't add up. Why would Mark keep a secret from me, but then bring this woman to Lily's ballet class, a public place where anyone could see them? It didn't make sense. It was all a tangled mess of pain and confusion. The story was getting more complex, and I was hooked. It wasn't just a simple case of a controlling son-in-law. There was a new character in the mix, a woman who seemed to have a place in Lily's life that Carol no longer did. The image of the three of them walking out of the ballet studio, a picture of domestic bliss that Carol was completely shut out of, was gut-wrenching. I could feel the betrayal and the bewilderment in her voice. She was trying to fit the pieces of a puzzle that didn't seem to have a clear picture. She was looking for a villain, but she couldn't find one that fit. Not yet, anyway. After she told me about the woman at the ballet studio, Carol seemed to get a new sense of resolve. The grief in her eyes was still there, but now it was mixed with a fiery determination. She was done being a victim. She was going to get answers. I decided I couldn't wait around anymore, she said, her voice strong now. I knew they were going to be at Lily's spring recital at her school a few weeks later. I was going to confront Mark no matter what. I put on my best dress, did my hair and makeup, and went there with my head held high. I was a grandmother, and I had every right to be there. I can just picture her, walking into that auditorium like she was going into battle. She wasn't just Carol anymore. She was a warrior for her granddaughter. I was on the edge of my seat, waiting to hear what happened next. I found them in the crowd, and I walked straight up to Mark. He saw me, and his face went white. He grabbed Jess's arm, but it was too late. I was already there. Mark, I said, we need to talk. Right now. He looked around nervously, but I wasn't backing down. I wasn't going to make a scene, but I was going to get my answers. Jess just stood there staring at the floor, and I knew she was a part of this, but I didn't care. I needed to know what was going on. My heart was pounding just listening to this. Can you imagine the tension in that moment? All those parents and kids and this quiet, desperate drama unfolding right in the middle of it. Mark finally gave in and led me outside, away from the crowd. His face was a mask of frustration and, was it fear? What do you want, Carol? He said, his voice low and angry. I told you it's not a good time. And that's when I lost it. All the pain, all the unanswered calls, all the loneliness just came pouring out. Not a good time? It's been 6 months. You're keeping me from my granddaughter, and I have a right to know why. I saw you with that woman at the ballet studio. Is that it, Mark? Are you having an affair, and you're keeping me away so I won't find out? Is that why Jess is so quiet? Oh, I almost dropped the curling iron. She just came right out and said it. Bold, honest, and completely on the mark, I thought. But what he said next, it wasn't what I was expecting at all. He just stared at me for a long moment, and then he sighed, a long, tired sigh. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months and said, Carol, it's not what you think. And Jess isn't quiet because of me. She's quiet because she's sick. Really sick. I was stunned. What are you talking about? I asked. What kind of sick? And that's when he looked at me and said the words that changed everything. Jess has Huntington's disease, Carol. We just found out 6 months ago. It's a genetic neurodegenerative disease. It's what took her father. It's why you can't see Lily. We can't let her see her mother in this state. It's too much for a 5-year-old. And the woman you saw at the ballet studio? That's Jess's new caregiver, a physical therapist. We didn't want you to know. We didn't want you to worry. And we especially didn't want you to see what this disease is doing to our daughter. My jaw literally dropped. I had to sit down for a moment, just processing this. Huntington's? The same disease that took her husband, and they kept it a secret from her? All this time, Carol was thinking the worst, that she was being punished, that her son-in-law was a monster, that her daughter had turned on her. And the truth was 100 times more devastating. It wasn't about her at all. It was about her daughter's survival and their desperate attempt to protect their family. Carol sat there, tears streaming down her face, and I didn't say a word. There was nothing to say. The shock of it all was overwhelming. All this time, the brick wall, the silence, the excuses. It wasn't about malice. It was about fear, about a family trying to cope with an unimaginable tragedy. He told me everything right there, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. He explained that Jess was in the early stages, but the symptoms were already affecting her motor skills and her memory. That's why she was so withdrawn, so quiet. The disease was stealing her from them, piece by piece. They were trying to get a handle on it, to find the right care, to figure out how to tell their daughter. And they thought keeping me out of it was the best way to protect me from the pain, and to protect Lily from seeing her mother's slow decline. They thought they were protecting me. Maria. I was so angry and so hurt. But in that moment, all I could feel was the weight of their secret, the weight of their grief. I just kept coloring her hair, the rhythmic motion a comfort to us both. What do you do when the truth is so much worse than the lie? I asked him why they didn't just tell me, Carol continued, her voice filled with a mix of sadness and understanding. And he said, "We couldn't, Carol. You loved her so much. We didn't want to break your heart, and we didn't want you to have to go through this all over again. We just didn't have the strength to tell you and watch you fall apart. So we shut everyone out." And that's when I understood. It wasn't about me. It was about them, about their love for their family, and their desperate, desperate attempt to hold it all together. The story had gone from a simple family drama to a profound tragedy. The villain, Mark, wasn't a villain at all. He was a man trying to hold his family together in the face of a devastating illness. The victim, Carol, wasn't just a grandmother being shut out. She was a mother who was unknowingly being shielded from a pain so deep, it could have broken her. "I went over to their house that night," she said, her eyes now filled with a new kind of light, a light of acceptance. "And I hugged my daughter, and I hugged my son-in-law, and I didn't say a word. And for the first time in 6 months, I got to hold my granddaughter. I held her tight, and I told her I loved her, and she smiled and said, 'I love you too, Grandma.'" And the silence. It was finally broken. We started talking. We started making a plan. Now I'm a part of it all. I'm helping with Jess's care. I'm spending time with Lily every day. The truth was hard, but it was also the key to healing. I was so angry, but I realized they weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to protect me. And that love, that's the most powerful thing of all. Carol finished her story, her hair now a beautiful shade of mahogany, her face serene, her spirit lighter. We stood there for a moment, just basking in the silence of her words. She came in looking for a trim, but she left with a new perspective, a renewed sense of purpose, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest acts of love are the ones we can't see. It wasn't a happy ending, not in the traditional sense, but it was an honest one, a real one, a human one. So, tell me, honey, after hearing that whole story, what would you have done in her place? Would you have been as forgiving?